Okay, welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to kind of continue with what I have here. I just kind of broke this up so it's not a really long video. And you can kind of watch it as need be or rewatch videos. So I still have my intro paragraph here, and I realize I've got an extra space. So let's get rid of that. Now, I want to go into my first body paragraph. So maybe for this one, I'm going to begin to think about the structure of my paper. And for all intents and purposes, we can think of this as a 5-paragraph essay where we have an intro, 3 supporting body paragraphs, and then a conclusion. Now, since this part here, I'll go ahead and bold it for myself and for you all watching. This bolded part is my thesis. Of course, the thesis is the last sentence of the intro paragraph. So I've got my thesis there, and I've got to think about this for a second, right? So I want to prove to my reader that Dr. Seuss is reminding us about why we should accept each other for who we are on the inside. So the first point that I want to make, and I'm going to kind of do this again in outline form, just so you can see my thought process. I want to prove that there is some, what do I want to call it? Bias or stereotyping in the Sneetches. So I want to show that. Then maybe in the next part, I'm going to show why putting stars on and taking them off is so important to the Sneetches, because this will show that they are worried about the outside appearance, what they look like. And then maybe the last thing is I'm going to show how McBean is wrong that Sneetches can't learn. And I'm going to try and show that the Sneetches, realize that we should focus on what's inside, not what's outside. Okay, so now that I have that, this would be my intro that we looked at in the last video. Then I've got my first paragraph, second, and third. And I'm not going to worry about a conclusion yet. It's a whole other thing that I want to take into account. So maybe what I'll do here again, not necessarily the way that I would usually write a paper. If this is the way you do it, that's fine. But I want to think about what evidence do I have. So I kind of referenced above this part. The Starbelly Sneetches do not allow plain belly Sneetches to participate in any of their games or events. And I want to think about where do I see that? So I see it in the thing about the Frankfurter roasts. If you'll remember, it says the Starbelly Sneetches won't let anybody else participate in their Frankfurter roast and their sort of campfire hanging out. Then we also have a mother Sneetch, and I'll specify for both of us, Starbelly. A mother Starbelly Sneetch tells her kid not to play with plain bellies. Okay, so I've got 2 pieces of evidence. I'm going to call that pretty good for right now. But I think we've got about 5 minutes before I want to wrap this up. So I think what I'll do here is I'll just for myself, because I can go back to the story and pull an actual quote. But what I want to do right now is just focus on kind of the structure and the thought process, right? So in my mind, okay, I want to prove there is some bias. I want to say that they're not allowed to participate in Frankfurter roasts. And why does this show some sort of bias? This shows bias because the only reason that the plain belly cannot be part of the Frankfurter roast, probably shouldn't be capitalized, but that's okay. It's a rough draft. Roasts cannot be a part of the, simply because they do not have stars. in this part, Dr. Seuss shows us how less sad the plain bellies feel. All right. Then I'll do the same thing here. A mother starbelly Sneetch tells her kid not to play with plain bellies. This shows bias because the starbelly parents are teaching their kids that there is something wrong or lesser about the plain belly Sneetches. This implies that star bellies are somehow better than plain bellies just because they don't have stars. Okay, so now I kind of have a body paragraph. Now, a lot of students will ask, how many pieces of evidence do I need for a body paragraph? And that's a good question. I would say generally 2 pieces of evidence is really comfortable to work with. 3 can be a lot, kind of depends on how you choose your evidence, how long that particular quote is. And then if I go more than 3, it tends to be a lot and kind of feels like an avalanche of information. If I do 1, then the problem that I run is just not having enough to convince my audience, right? Imagine that somebody's trying to convince you that the earth is flat and they only have 1 piece of evidence, which is they've never been to outer space. It's not necessarily enough to convince us. The more evidence we have, the more convincing we are. But we also want to use what we call the PI method, which is point, illustration, explanation. So if I unbold this for just a moment, the point that I am trying to make is here. The illustration is that quote about Frankfurter roasts. And then the explanation is how I am saying that evidence proves something, okay? And it would be the same here. I, again, have illustration and explanation. Now, just as I kind of wrap up this video, one thing that I will say is I'm not a fan of just doing everything exactly the same like this because it can make it feel really formulaic. But I think if this is what you're comfortable with, there's no reason not to necessarily do it this way. Just know that as we progress through the quarter, we can push that further and we can further develop your writing skills. Okay. So the one other thing that I'm going to do in this video, again, real time, I plan this or think this through in a really scripted way, as I sometimes do, but I'm going to go ahead and title this Literary Analysis, first paragraph, student, in which student would be the student's name. So there we go. We've got a good start, right? And we could expand. Again, the reminder, the last thing I'll say in closing is this, again, is work that gets hidden, that a reader isn't going to see. This is for you, but I want you to see, in 20 minutes, we created our intro and we've started putting together our paper. Now, it might take a little bit more time, right? A more complicated story takes a little bit more time. Familiarity with the story will make it take a little bit more time. But even if it's just some basic ideas, we've got a starting point that we can develop. Some of you, I'm sure, are in the habit of, I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to write a draft beginning to end and call it good. Very few people can really get away with that. I don't think I can get away with that. I need more time and more breathing room to kind of think and formulate my ideas, okay? So there you go. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, or recipes, please let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you later.